In Ark, staying alive is the most challenging part of the game, and in a hardcore challenge where staying alive is the only thing to worry about, one single mistake can wash dozens of hours of grinding down the drain. In case you didn't know, death in a hardcore playthrough means you don't get to respawn and have to make a brand new level 1 character. Unfortunately, I made a mistake that did exactly that. I started my journey like anyone else, naked and surrounded by the simultaneous beauty and horror of nature. If you've ever been stranded on a beach in isolation, you know the most important first step to survival is taking a selfie. How can one survive and thrive without memories of a past self? With that extremely important survival step out of the way, it was time to formulate a plan, and it was simple. Don't die. To do so, I would need to be able to outrun the many carnivores that inhabit Lost Island, so with each new level came an additional point into movement speed. Movement speed alone wouldn't unlock success, however, as there are many variables at play when dealing with the complications of human survival in a world full of dinosaurs. Something every survivor will need is a form of shelter, and in the early stages of the game, the easiest shelter to build is one made of thatch. So I gathered, harvested, and swung my pickaxe with everything I had, for it was my only shot at success in such early stages. In a normal, non-hardcore playthrough, I wouldn't waste my time with such trivial structures, but with safety being my #1 priority, I couldn't afford to lose those few extra moments of safety a thatch hut would provide, given the very real possibility of a raptor or carno surprising me. Piece by piece, my thatch hut started to become a home, complete with a small storage box to help ease the load of hundreds of thatch, wood, and fiber. With my new temporary home complete, sunset was quickly approaching, and since I was so close to the forest, it was extremely likely that Troodons would end this challenge early. So, to avoid an embarrassing death, I crafted a torch to scare them away before they got too close. In the wise words of a random person on the internet, you know I keep that thing on me. Since some semblance of safety has been checked off the list, it was time to hunt. I'd need lots of hide for various craftables, and hunting was the only way to get it. Hunting for hide has the added benefit of providing raw meat as well, and surviving on berries alone only works for so long. The meat would be a welcomed addition to my diet. After making a campfire and cooking some meat, I decided I need to be a bit more efficient in my hunting to allow myself to take down bigger prey, as dodos and listros would only get me so far. It was time for a bow and arrows, and bolas. With bolas, I could stop parasaurs in their tracks and kill them for meat and hide, and with the bow, I could take down trikes with a bit of skill and strategy. The combination of those items in conjunction with some quick thinking would also protect me from any raptors that might find their way to me, so their usefulness became invaluable. With more crafting came more levels, which meant more movement speed and an increased chance of survival against hostile creatures. I would eventually rinse and repeat this hunting, crafting, and leveling process enough to get some basic hide armor and one of the most useful items in the game, trank arrows. From the start, I knew surviving on this beach wouldn't be something I could do permanently, as valuable resources like metal and crystal were nowhere to be found. So I needed a way to leave this area and get closer to those resources. There's no better way to do so than a pteranodon, so my sights were set on a new goal. I realized I would be staying at my beach house just a bit longer than I originally anticipated because I needed to reach level 38 to get the pteranodon saddle anyway. So I upgraded my flimsy thatch shack to a much more sturdy wood house. The best way for me to level would be to continue hunting, crafting, and accumulating basic resources to make my life easier in the long run. Doing so would be infinitely faster with a tame, so I began taming the first parasaur I saw. This would allow me to load it up with much more stone and wood than I could carry myself, making me take less trips back and forth between resource nodes in my base, therefore decreasing the time it takes to gather. This is all well and good and pretty standard for the early game, but Ark isn't the type of game to let things go smoothly for too long. Enter Carno. That is a freaking Carno. Carnos aren't typically much of a threat if they're a low enough level, but with my being an early game without a spyglass, I couldn't tell how dangerous the Carno really was. Therefore, I had to proceed as if it could eliminate me and my progress with ease. I hurriedly built a trap out of wood, because if it was a good Carno, I figured I could tame it. But before I got the trap up, this was nerve-wracking because normally creatures prioritize aggro onto players, but I got super lucky and the Carno continued chasing this parasaur. I took that as a sign that something had to be done immediately. So I finished with the last of the trap and prepared my mind for a potentially game-ending encounter. With a forced sense of confidence and deep trust in a trap that would surely break if I made one wrong move, I moved closer and closer to the Carno. Finally, it noticed me and the plan was set in action. It was do or die here, and I couldn't afford to die. Every step closer to the trap was a step closer to safety, a step closer to a powerful defense dino that would protect me in the early stages of the game. With one final leap of faith and a tightly clenched butthole, the Carno was in. I knocked it out and realized that this was a feeble Carno, not worth all the time I spent on it. It wasn't the time to regret my actions though, as safety was the priority here, so I harvested it and moved on with my life. Hopefully the trap would prove useful later. With my first deadly encounter out of the way, it was time for upgrades. There were some nearby river rocks that would provide me with just enough metal to upgrade my tools and crafting stations. Unfortunately, these upgrades required an expansion to my base that would take me quite some time to complete. However, with the urgent need to progress my game, it was my best option. With the ever-present plan to get a pteranodon and leave this beach, I found myself walking back and forth along the shores looking for easy sources of chitin and a high enough level flyer to get me through these beginning stages. Through my investigation of nearby beaches, another Carno had spawned and it stood between me and my base. A Carno? Really? There was a slim chance I'd be able to navigate around it without it noticing me, so the best option would be to aggro the creature head on and lead it into the trap near my base. I want to reiterate that threats like this while on foot with hide armor are the things that kill players, so caution was wildly important with this encounter. Fortunately though, with my experience and 158% movement speed, I was able to get the Carno into the trap. I decided to knock it out as I couldn't see the level without risking death. 135! This trap provided excellent value after all, and after taming, I'd be 10 times safer on the beach. Walking with a new confidence and a powerful carnivore aiding me, I knew it was time to get off this beach. The time had come. There was literally no reason for me to be here anymore, and I was risking progress, vital upgrades, and thus death by staying. So, I found a good pteranodon, knocked it out, was lucky enough to get enough chitin for it, and began scouting out the new base location, along with getting myself the necessary supplies to craft a much-needed spyglass. 10 days into this adventure, and I was off to a wonderful start. I had scheduled myself 5 real hours to plan stream every day, and the day was coming to a close. I would move to my new base location on the second day of the stream. By the way, all of this was recorded live, and the VODs are on my channel in this playlist. So if you want to see this unedited, that's the place to go. Anyway, the next day finally came, and with a fresh 5-hour stream in front of me, it was time to move. Moving to this new cave is smart because it's very near to a lot of metal, crystal, and obsidian, as well as having tons of Rexes around. At first, the Rexes would be a huge danger, but with this cave being so large, it would be really easy to tame and trap the right one. Anyway, it took me a while to move everything from the beach house to my new cave location because I had to make several trips, but this is expected when using starter tame. Before I left the beach house, I made a fabricator to christen my new home and make it actually feel like it was a better place to be. Let's be real, it was. Placing all these crafting benches at the cave felt really good, and I wanted to ride the high a little longer, so I made some cryopods and collected my precious pets from the salty shores of my starter home. Because my new base location had some actually decent metal nodes to harvest, I was able to adorn myself with flak armor to further protect me from the dangers I would face. I knew that if I wanted to continue to make any real progress, I need to start taming important utility creatures like Argies and Ankies, as well as powerful boss fighting carnivores like Rexes. And so my new plan had begun. I quickly crafted a very basic yet effective Argie trap and scoured the area for one that was worthy of taming. 135, I will take that. Guiding Argies into traps isn't usually dangerous, but with this being a hardcore playthrough, even the simplest of tasks become persistent sources of perturbation. My first attempt at coaxing the bird into my trap failed, leaving me panicked for a moment, but things were slow enough so I was able to try again. Success. Many trank arrows later, I loaded the now unconscious feathered friend with meat to begin the taming process. RG saddles require a lot of chitin, and the best way to get lots of it is to kill bugs. This would require a lot more effort and risk than the easy chitin I got from trilobites in the early game. Thankfully, there was a cave nearby that was home to many bugs, and I had the perfect cave creature, a Carno. Caves are wildly dangerous though. A single misstep and the game would be over, so I had to stay focused and be acutely aware of my surroundings. Inside the cave was a small group of Arthropleura that I began to fight, and they did a surprising amount of damage to my Carno, enough to make me harvest whatever chitin I could and leave. Fortunately, this cave also has loot drops, so on my way out I found this nice piece of fur armor that would definitely come in handy later. Now, successfully out of danger and equipped with almost everything I'd need for the RG saddle, my life became a waiting game. Unfortunately, in Ark, sometimes waiting around isn't the most productive thing to do, and with only 100 days available in this run, I didn't want to waste any time. Since I was feeling confident, I hopped on my Pteranodon and headed towards the Ice Wyvern trenches to get a Wyvern egg. This was probably the riskiest thing I've done so far in the playthrough, so keeping my eyes peeled would be an understatement. Pteranodons can outrun Wyverns, but just barely, and Ice Wyverns can slow my flyer down significantly. In the event that that happens, it would be completely over. This had to be an in and out mission with no delay in between. I knew where all the nests were in this trench though, so it was just a matter of finding an egg worth taking. The first egg I found was level 20, and the rest, just the one level 20. Yeah, definitely not worth the risk of aggroing every wyvern in the area for a level 20 egg. In the midst of my failed thievery though, the Argy tamed, so I brought it back to base, saddled it up, and started the hunt for an Ankylosaurus to help me farm metal. I found one, brought it back to my cave, and started the taming process once again. I knew this tame would be successful since I've tamed many Ankies in the past, so I started focusing on my next objective, which was to tame a Griffin. A Griffin would help me collect the wyvern eggs I wanted while significantly increasing my success rate because of their speed and maneuverability. I began working on the most expensive Griffin trap the world has ever seen, completed the Anky tame, and finished my stream for the day. That meant that days 11 through 21 were complete and a brand new day was in front of me. The next day would be one of the saddest days in my Ark career. This is the day I would fail. This is the reason you clicked the video. Start taking notes. I started my day by picking up where I left off on the previous day, by looking for a Griffin. But only a few moments into my journey, chat mentioned something about a snow owl, and I realized that a snow owl would be just as fast as a Griffin and a much easier tame, so I turned around. I found a snow owl and tamed it, but unfortunately, I would need more chitin if I wanted to ride it. So I had to go back to the cave to fight more Arthros, but this time would be different. The bugs are smarter than we think. They set up an ambush. I was extremely lucky to get out of that situation alive. Thankfully, I collected a small amount of chitin from a couple dung beetles, so the trip wasn't a complete loss. In fact, it would be just enough chitin to get the saddle and jump on the snow owl. Because I didn't have any luck with eggs in the ice wyvern trench, I decided I would try my luck with the lightning and fire wyverns. With feelings of anxiety and persistence, I started to push my way into their dwelling. As soon as I entered the trench, I realized I had no idea where any nests were and that I'd have to make one trip through without stopping to familiarize myself with the area. The wyverns had different plans. In the blink of an eye, it all came to a screeching halt. My disappointment was indescribable. 12.5 hours of my life and nearly 25 days in-game were washed down the drain in a matter of seconds. My single mistake forced me to start the whole challenge over, on a beach at level 1, taking selfies. Which leads us here. This second attempt at the challenge is still ongoing, and you can catch me live every day until it's completed. I'm streaming this challenge for 5 hours a day for a total of 10 days, 13 if you count the first attempt, and editing it down into a much more watchable version, much like the video you just watched. Anyway, snow owls have forsaken me and will forever be listed as my least liked creature in the game for no other reason than my own ignorance and lack of skill. So, thank you so much for your time today, and I'll hopefully see you in my next stream. Bye!